Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Kentucky Derby training show here from the folks at FanDuel. Christina Blacker with you in Louisville, Kentucky. And as we had opening night last night, the Downs After Dark program, we drew post positions for the Kentucky Derby and the Kentucky Oaks. So we have a much more clear picture of what these races are going to look like. And really, the trainers are putting the final touches on their runners these last few days. It's Sunday morning. Luckily, I have some help with me today to join me and bring you some analysis of those works. Andie Biancone was out at the barn all morning. Geena Lucille was out at the barn. And in fact, you guys are still out at the barn all morning. I made it back to the hotel for the show here. But ladies, it was another great day in terms of Oaks and Derby horses. And Geena, I'll start with you. Any standouts just visually from what you saw this morning, whether that was at the walk, at the jog, at the canter, or out there on a breeze?
I'm going to talk about Catalytic, and I know we're going to dive deeper into him later, but looked impressive and really came back. And he is such a dude. He is in his feed tub right now, just chowing down.
Don't interrupt breakfast. You'll get in a lot of trouble with the trainer. So we'll wait until Catalytic wants to make his appearance on the show. Andie, where are you, and how was your morning?
I'm in the tack room, Asmussen Racing tack room. But it was awesome. I mean, it's incredible, just the atmosphere. These horses come out of the track at 7:30. But in terms of who stood out to me, a lot of the Oaks fillies. Candied looked exceptional. I do believe she stood in the gate today, but I did see her gallop by, and she looked fantastic. She was moving over the track so well. Just FYI, looked great. Tarifa, I just could not get over these ladies. They all look great, and obviously Catalytic and Stronghold. Stronghold especially, very, very keen going to the pole and had a great gallop out in his work, Christina.
We do have those works for you coming up in a little bit. We got a quick glimpse at Catalytic there over Geena's shoulder. Let's start by just showing the post positions that were drawn last night. So, ladies, here's a look at the first half of the field. And one thing that we always pay attention to is who draws the rail. Geena, what were your impressions of Dornoch ending up along the inside, and how does that affect his tactics in the race?
So I'm going to start off with, the positive. I'm a positive, half glass kind of full girl here. The gates are much smaller than they were before. So that first turn, it was usually really tight and bumped in, and horses got shoved back, right? Unless they had crazy speed. So with Dornoch, Danny Gargan, I was actually sitting with Danny Gargan and his crew, and they were like, oh, like your heart sinks to your stomach when that happens. But on the bright side is the gates are smaller, so, and this horse is so tactical, so he should be fine. Plus, having Sierra Leone, on the inside, Mystic Dan, is actually probably going to work out in Dornoch's favor. But yes, that was definitely a bit of a hit for the Gargan barn.
Yeah, I thought that as well, and I think it does kind of commit him a little bit to using the speed that we saw in the Fountain of Youth. Sierra Leone, Mystic Dan, they're both going to drop back. So I think for those two, we were expecting them to be closing out the back of the pack. They will get a lot of kickback, but they're horses that have already dealt with that. In terms of this first page, Andie, any winners or losers, or does it all kind of look pretty even with some of the other horses that we're seeing as far as post position goes?
Honestly, I feel like Dornoch really got short end of the stick here. Obviously, it helps that he has two closers to his outside, so nobody's really going to be gunning it with him. But he just does not strike me as the kind of horse who's going to handle all the pressure of 19 horses outside of him. He's a very immature horse to me. Physically, mentally, he's big. He does have a little bit of tactical speed, but it all kind of seems like he's still figuring it out. You see him down the wire. He kind of gets in when he switches leads, and he goes, he stops, he goes, he stops. I just don't like that.
Encino draws post position number 9. I've been really impressed by him, and I had the chance to talk to Brad Cox yesterday, and I was interviewing him about Catching Freedom and Encino and Just a Touch, but I just felt like he was really pleased with how well Encino has bounced out of the Lexington, and he just comes back out there and really has a commanding presence. He's a big colt. He covers a lot of ground. Andie, have you seen him train in the last couple of days and felt the same?
Yes, 100%. His work was phenomenal. Encino's a funny horse because in all his starts at Turfway, we never really saw him show any speed, set very slow fractions. He's by Nyquist, Tapeta horse, and then on form, I liked him in the Lexington, but when I saw him in person, he's kind of a compact horse. He doesn't have a lot of length to him. He is very kind of heavy, and I was like, oh, maybe this horse is just kind of a grindy, slow type, and he shocked me, setting quick fractions, being forwardly placed. Light bulb really went on, and I think especially with the way he worked the other day, he is going to be forward. He does have that extra gear of speed that you need to assert yourself in the race. So Encino, very live. He couldn't be looking any better.
Let's turn the page and take a look at the second page in terms of post positions here. And thanks to a few of you that have popped in with some comments. Mike says Catching Freedom is his choice. Kelly, great to have you with us here as well. Okay, turning the page, Track Phantom draws post position number 12. We see Endlessly right around the middle of the field, post position 14. Stronghold, post position number 18. And then let's touch on Fierceness in here, because I think this went very well for our morning line favorite at 5-2. Geena, do you like post 17 for Fierceness?
I do like the post 17 for Fierceness, and I do believe that this horse is by far one of the most talented horses I've ever witnessed on the track, but I don't know how confident I am with this horse if he gets into trouble. Now, the one aspect of this game is he's got Johnny V aboard, and Johnny V has probably ridden more derbies than I could even count, right? Anybody. So he's got a great rider on him to keep him out of trouble. We've just seen so many favorites get beat, and it is a 20-horse field, and I haven't seen this horse fight for anything because he's so athletically gifted. And usually when horses have to dig down, when they're so talented and things get hard, it's like having to do tough homework. They kind of just spit the bit, and I have seen him do that before. That's just my personal opinion.
I think the break is really key for him too. And if you look back to his races that maybe weren't his best, they were also races that he didn't kind of get out of the gate as well. And to me, Andie, that phrase that we hear trainers say all the time, break running, I think that's what we need to see from Fierceness. If he breaks running, that to me puts him in a perfect position to be outside the speed, in the clear, just sitting off the early leaders in this race.
Absolutely. And he needs things to go his way. He is definitely the type of horse who likes to pick and choose. He'd rather be on the outside of horses and get to be the one who's coming onto them versus him being on the inside and them being all over him. With that being said, he's got to be able to work his way over, because nobody wants to get caught going 8 wide going into that first turn. One thing about Fierceness, I've always been a bit, as much as I love Team Tap, Tom Fletcher, #1 GOAT forever, I've always been a little bit anti-Fierceness because I didn't see a lot of physical change from him from the Breeders' Cup going into the Florida Derby trail. Like, physically, it just did not change from the Breeders' Cup, and that development is so essential with these young horses. You want to see them. Anyone can be precocious, but it's how they change and develop coming into the first Saturday of May. And I do have to say, I saw him gallop on the track this morning, and he looked a lot better than he did in Florida. His coat is finally good. I feel like his coat was a bit dry all throughout Florida for some reason, and now he's really shiny. He's holding his weight a lot better. The couple times I'd seen him up in Florida, he was arguably very light. He did look better in the Florida Derby than the prior races, but now he is starting to look better. So I'm starting to be a little more like, okay, maybe.
I think that's really insightful, Andie, because you've had the chance to watch him in his training for such a long time. And one thing that I haven't heard in any interviews, and maybe this has been said, it looks to me like Todd Pletcher has just been bringing him along slowly. And we criticized the Holy Bull quite a bit, and he finished 3rd, but he just looked like he was short in my eyes. Maybe they thought they could get away with being able to beat them and being 70%, but he ended up running into some good horses that day. And I see that progression to try and peak this weekend from him.
Yeah, trust the process, right?
Tell me a little bit more about what you've seen in that process, Andie.
Yeah, just like I said, the first time we saw him, Holy Bull, he was looking a little bit light, not a lot of physical change from the Breeders' Cup to then. Even his coat was a bit dull. We saw that kind of flat effort. And then to the Florida Derby, I said, okay, this horse looks I'm like, I've been a Fierceness hater this whole like pathway, but he does. I was like, he looks good. He was shiny. He was holding his weight better, and now he looks even better. Granted, he's still not my physical favorite horse of everybody. He's a freaky good mover. He glides over the track, super long stride, really effective in the way he moves. But he's just not like, I don't know. He's not that
Taking your
like,
breath away.
he's not Forte. Like
Well,
when I saw Forte last,
maybe
oh my gosh, you know. So, but he is progressing the right way.
I think we haven't seen a horse have so much impulsion, and Fierceness has a lot of impulsion. He has that like that lift on the dirt, and he pushes and he strides out. We haven't seen that in a while in the last few derbies. So I think and I think he's developed. When the horses when they grow, their hind end goes up, they go up, they keep growing, and these horses don't stop growing until they're 6-7 years old. So I think that's probably something about Fierceness that we might need to just give him a little bit of a break. He's probably been doing some growing.
Let's jump into the work. So we have some great comments coming in as well. Thanks to Mike. He sounds like he's very much on the Fierceness bandwagon. One of the works that we wanted to show you today was one we didn't get a chance to show yesterday. This is a work from yesterday morning, Saturday, Door Knock and Society Man. Society Man's on the outside, Door Knock's on the inside. Interestingly, they were flipped last week in terms of who was inside, who was outside. But the way that this has worked out, Andie, with the post position that Door Knock draws, maybe a good kind of opportunity for Door Knock to get used to being along the inside again.
Yes, definitely. And I could be mistaken here, but it seems like they've got a different type of blinker on him. I'm going to have to do a little more research on that, but he looks like he's wearing a much bigger cup in this work than the blinkers I've seen him wear historically.
We're keeping an eye on the gallop out here, and that was kind of a shorter snippet of the work. We'll show it to you one more time. It was pretty fast. 4 furlongs, 46 and 3. Geena, I was up in the grandstand. Danny Gargan was right next to me as he was watching this work, and he said the track's fast. And I think it was fast, but I think it's also a good sign. These horses don't look like they're laying their bodies down. And when you look at the watch and you see a time like that, when it looks visually like this, you have to be pleased.
Oh, absolutely. We've seen a lot of horses belly down and kind of sink down and really push and put a lot of effort into these works. But these two, this two little dynamic duo for the Gargan barn really did it easily, effortlessly and very easily. And really, if you think about it, the fact that they work like this, it really does set them up for their post positions that they've drawn. And Society Man, Christina, we were talking about this morning. Rich Strike won from all the way on the outside. So that's not a terrible place for a horse like Society Man who can make a late run and just kind of sit back and pick the pieces. And he might be able to pick the biggest piece of all.
West Pace is Racing, the syndicate involved with both of those horses. I saw Larry Conley after the draw last night, and I said, what are the odds of your horses drawing post 1 and post 20? And he said, about the odds of having 2 horses in the Derby. And I thought that was really apropos because it's difficult to get to this position. Here we are, inside, outside, they have to make the best of it. But Danny Gargan doing a great job getting both those horses to the Derby. Let's move ahead to Stronghold from Phil D'Amato's barn. He worked this morning in company. He's on the outside under Joe Talamo, just a workmate along the inside under Martin Garcia. This was a 5 furlong work in 59 and 4. Andie, I can see they're checking their watches a little bit here. I think they might have gone a little too quick in the early stages.
Yeah, and that isn't his workmate is no slouch. That's Motorious, multiple graded stakes winner, most recently finished 5th in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint, 6 years old. And I hate to say it, but Stronghold dusted him in the gallop out. Just, oh my gosh. And going to the pole, as soon as these two were let loose from the ponies, both jockeys, Martin Garcia was on Motorious on the inside, Joe Talamo was on the outside, and I was literally on the backside, and you could hear them going, oh gosh, like, no, because they were just grabbing the bits and going. And I have to say, this is a bit random, but very California versus East Coast. California horses, I feel like to work take a lot more of a hold. go into the pole, and you could tell Joe Talamo, we could see him like looking down at his watch mid-stretch, and he's like, uh-oh, we're going way too fast here. But it just looked like a very easy work. And the fact that he was able to essentially outwork an older, proven horse is a very good sign.
We train for speed a lot in California, and you see that from these horses. Geena, I also love the way that Phil Damato has handled Stronghold, just in terms of the management, because with Bob Baffert on the West Coast, with his horses unable to earn points along the way to the Derby, but also competing in those races, I see it as very intentional for Phil to send him to Sunland to pick up some Derby points early. And maybe with the foresight of, we don't know who we're going to run into in the Santa Anita Derby. Now, Stronghold ends up winning the race, but we didn't have Nysos in there. We didn't have May Moon in there. We didn't have Muth in there. He went to the Arkansas Derby. So a piece of the Santa Anita Derby might have been enough in terms of points to get him here. But I think Stronghold has just developed so much that he was able to win it, and he's really coming on at the right time, Geena.
Stronghold is a big, strong, confident horse. Again, I gotta find another word for confidence. But Phil Damato and his team, they're just really true blue West Coast horsemen. I mean, Phil is he is not shy to any type of, horse that has a lot of talent, and he knows how to guide them in that direction and also give them time to grow and develop. So getting those points early and not running the horse off his feet because he's a big horse is really going to benefit this horse for the longevity of his career.
Stronghold draws post position 10, and Antonio Fresu will be in this saddle. We look forward to seeing what he can do. And the first Derby starter for Phil Damato. You think of the dominance that he's had on the West Coast in terms of, trainer's title after trainer's title. He's been unstoppable. And it's a real example of how difficult it is to get to the Kentucky Derby. I think it's, this is one of the best we have in the game, and this is his first Derby starter. Speaking of some of the best in the game, Hall of Famer Bill Mott worked his horses this morning, Resilience and Just FYI. We have Resilience for you. He draws post 19. Andie, this is a real kind of high energy type horse. Even at his jog, at his gallop, I see him as just being one of those you're always trying to grab a hold and throttle him down.
Yeah, you can see the exercise rider here kind of staying off the rail, even in the turn, just probably trying to get him to settle, not go too fast. Obviously, he doesn't have a workmate. Really good mover, beautiful horse, and he was standing really nicely on the track with Bill Mott for a good period of time. So it was nice to just see him take that deep breath before his work. But a beautiful horse, to say the very least. It's funny, Junior Alvarado had worked him as a 2-year-old and said that this horse would be a better 3-year-old, and it was absolutely right. He was saying this horse has done the majority of his running in his 3-year-old season, and Junior just says he's just so big and needed the time, and I think it's absolutely true, but he is coming along in good order.
Geena, Andie mentions Junior Alvarado. I know you had a chance to spend some time with him this morning. He was not on Resilience, but he was on Just FYI. What did he tell you about her this morning?
He just reiterated everything that we have been saying about that filly, Just FYI, and how confident and classy she is, and how great she is to be around, and how her development has been. And I find it extremely awesome for this filly to draw very similar post positions that she drew in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. So that's a win for this team to be doing that.
Hopefully we'll get a chance to show you that work tomorrow. But I think the sort of theme of the Bill Mott horses this morning was nice and easy. They didn't want to do too much. They did a little more last week. You see that from a lot of trainers, but it seemed very intentional. They were both, as you mentioned, Andie, off the rail, under a hold, just finishing touches. Don't do too much, trying to peak at the right time. The next worker we're going to show is right over your shoulder, Geena, Catalytic. He draws post position number 5 in the Derby, and he put in a pretty sharp work, 4 furlongs, 47 and 4. This horse is coming along really quickly right now when you consider his first route race was the Florida Derby, and he finishes second to the favorite. We can't underestimate his ability, and it was a really nice work. He was well within himself, Geena.
I love this horse where he gets his ears pricking, and then he puts them back. He knows when the go time is. And one thing about this horse, and you can also kind of tell that he's not really exuding a lot of effort into this work, but it was just a very straightforward. I believe it was a couple of people got a different time, so we're just going to go with a 48 flat work for this horse. And Jose Ortiz loved the ride. He was so straightforward. This horse is a dude. I mean, he's in here, you know, getting his lunch. He's just like, he's chill, came back in great form, got a bath, tons of press. One thing I love about this horse is nothing phases him. The crowd doesn't phase him, the gate, nothing. This horse is just a very straightforward, classy man. And you know, when I was looking back at him, I saw a very big immature horse, a horse that needed to grow into himself. And he has done just that in such a short amount of time, almost as if to be like, I get goosebumps talking about it because like it's time, like it is go time. And then drawing the 5 position for his post is like handing him a golden ticket.
He floats over the ground too. I like the way he moves,
does.
ears up on the gallop out. Happy horse, doing it all very well within himself out there. Can we see him, Geena? Can you give us like a little flip the camera and give us a look really quick?
Oh, he's down here. What you doing, buddy? Hi,
Catalytic,
handsome.
son of Catalina Cruiser, Safi Joseph trains, and again, a 5.5 length winner on debut back in his 2-year-old season. Second in his return to the races, but that was at 6 furlongs at Tampa. And then his first route, yes, he was 13 lengths behind Fierceness, but first time going 2 turns to consider a race like that. That's what earned him a spot in the gate. So I do love what we're seeing, and just how quickly he's coming on is catalytic. We have a couple more works to show you. We have Fierceness on the track this morning just from a jog as well. So we'll get to that in a second. And then I think we have a work from Everland. Yeah, here's Fierceness back to the track. His first day out there jogging, taking a look. There is a bigger crowd today. There was a bigger crowd all the way until turf workers at, late in the morning. Here's a question that we have that says, good morning. A question for all of you. Do you believe Fierceness will clear and take the lead after the first turn? Andie, I'll let you take this one. Do you think he can clear, or do you think he will clear even if he had the ability and try to take the lead?
I don't know. I don't see him taking the lead, but I definitely see him using some of that gas to overcome that wide post and establish himself at least forward mid-pack. Pace in the Derby is going to be everything, because you're either going to see them go slower and have them all come together, or you're going to see it spread out and have them drawn out. But I think Fierceness is going to be forward. He has to be from that outside post, but that's exactly what he likes to do. He likes to dominate. He likes to be outside and pick and choose where he's going to go. So that in itself is better than if he were to draw inside and still have to be aggressive and have everybody on his outside and not get to pick his position. So I think it's great. He is Geena was saying how catalytic is very laid back. He certainly is. And Fierceness is another one who's pretty chill. Like, you never see him grab the bit and pull. He's like the easiest horse to gallop, goes in like a D bit with slack in the reins and just like goes around there. You saw him jogging like do like, so it's nice to see horses with that kind of temperament. I think they kind of have a little bit more of an edge and over some horses who get too keyed up.
Yeah, that portion of his temperament is really going to serve him well. And actually, just the way he jogged right there with those ears up looking around, that's the most curious I've seen him all week. That's kind of the most responsive he's been, right, Geena, to anything. He's just taken it all in like he's been there, every day of his life.
Yeah, I've been there, done that. He's a horse that like Andie would, kind of relate to. He just makes you look good, when you get on him and you're riding the big horse in the barn and he just...
And they're like the easiest horse ever. It's like the easiest horse to gallop ever. But it really makes it a really good horse. Will, the Derby is a hard ask for any young horse. It's so much going on. I remember when I ran Sole Volante back in 2020, and that was like COVID Derby, so there was no crowd. And I still I don't remember saddling the horse. Like, I wanted to black out. I'm so nervous, and it's a big ask with the crowd and everything, and it really takes a special horse to handle that and do well. But a good horse will do it like they've done it their whole life 100 times, even if it's their first time at the Derby.
One more work to show you. We're going to switch gears to the fillies. Everland put in a work this morning for Eric Foster. This is quite a story, and I think we end up kind of finding one of these stories each and every year, a claim that they have turned in to a Kentucky Oaks filly. She's a daughter of Arrogate. Didn't ask her to do a whole lot. You can see just kind of skipping over the surface out there. Geena, she was successful in the Bourbonnette, and she's going to try to transfer that form to the main track.
Yeah, she ran a really high speed number as well in the Bourbonnette, and drawing, again, this is another horse that is drawing a very similar post position from where she had success before. So a lot of things is consistency with these horses, and not just the young horses, the older horses as well. When, we're looking at claiming horses and allowance horses, if we see them enter a similar race that they have won before, we can almost tell the betting public, hey, this is a horse with insurance. We can put some money down in it. So just keep an eye on, what we're saying here on FanDuel about these horses that are having similarities into these the races that coming up into their big race, for the Oaks and Kentucky Derby. And this filly right here is set up for another successful trip if she can get that same type of trip. Granted, we're here at Churchill, so a lot of things are different, but post position is the first part of the race.
Andie, one more question about what you saw from Everland, because she's kind of similar to Endlessly in that we're trying to gauge whether or not she can run the same type of race on the main track. Do you like the way she's moving over the dirt here at Churchill?
Absolutely. Just skipped over it. Was very light on her feet. She's actually really difficult to pull up. Abel Cedillo was on her, and he was kind of struggling to get her to stop. She is a really forward filly. Physically, she looked great. She maybe didn't have the same kind of class as Just FYI or Candied, but she still had more class than some of the Florida horses, if that makes sense. Like Fiona's Magic, Power Squeeze. I saw them this morning, and they honestly kind of looked dwarfed next to some of the Kentucky fillies, like Candied, Just FYI. And this one was holding her own too. And it was a positive sign to see Abel Cedillo. Like, you never see Abel struggle with a horse, and he was like, could barely pull her up. So
Just FYI looks like she could go out there with the boys. I mean, she's so leggy. She's that big. She was towering over the pony today. We have a question from Kelly. She says, good morning. What time next Saturday? Yes. So Kelly, post time for the Derby, 6:57 p.m. Eastern. So it'll be a full day of racing, 6:57 p.m. One more look at Catalytic. Ladies, that's going to wrap it up for our show today. We do have another streaming show coming up a little bit later on this afternoon, and that's at 3:00 Eastern, where we are going to recap so many of the works that we've seen pretty much all weekend, from Friday all the way through to today, maybe pull some works from earlier in the week. So a little bit more of a comprehensive look rather than just the daily look that we've been bringing you here at 11 a.m. No racing today. Everybody take a nap if you can. We'll be
I don't
back
know,
out.
his stall looks so nice. It's like so clean, and it has so much straw in there.
Bedded down well. Catalytic's
Catalytic.
nice and cozy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Take a little rest. Well, Geena, thank you. Andie, thank you. And for everyone that's tuning in and asking questions, we appreciate your engagement on the FanDuel Kentucky Derby Racing Training Show. We'll be back with you again tomorrow at the same time. And again, join us at 3:00 Eastern.